Hi everyone and welcome. It is an ICBA conversation and I am joined, by the way, I'm Jordan Bateman, Vice President Communications, the Independent Contractors and Businesses Association.
Jordan, I think they know who you are by now.
The mighty ICBA, here I am. And I'm joined in studio live by my friend Gavin Dew, who is running for the leadership of the BC Liberal Party and by extension to be the leader of the official opposition. Gavin, thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
I know Chris Gardner invited you in specifically today, so...
Should we take a moment just to, let's throw a little sand in Chris's gears. Chris invited me in for a meeting that's not actually until Wednesday. So we're making hay while the sun shines.
I was happy because I get to talk to Gavin, so it's all good.
I'm happy because I get to talk to Jordan.
That's right.
It all worked out.
So Gavin's running for leadership of the BC Liberals, and you've been doing a number of events across the province. And I happened to come to one, the famous Dew Brews down at Town Hall Pub in Langley, and I had a great time. It was great talking with you, some of your team, and then a number of supporters and other folks checking you out. Gavin, how's the campaign going? And if I may make an observation, I think your campaign is winning in the Funometer.
We are dedicated to being the most fun campaign. Somebody told me years ago that the campaign that has the most fun wins. Mm-hmm. And what I think not everyone realizes is how long this leadership campaign is. I mean, this thing really is a year long. We announced in March. So we've been in this a long time. We've got months more to go. And on that basis, when we started putting together a team and started putting together a plan, the first thing we thought about was culture. Right? So how do we make sure that when we recruit people to our campaign, they're going to have fun, they're going to like each other more at the end than they do at the beginning? And in order to do that, we have a set of rules that we operate by. And that's, can I say the A word? That's no drama, no assholes, no groupthink, and no apologizing for life obligations. And that served us pretty well because it means that we actually have a really, really fun group of people who are smart and committed and political and strategic, but who also genuinely like each other and are working together really well. So that's been really, really beneficial for us.
And who have real lives outside of politics.
Yeah, exactly, right? I mean, to be honest, it's so easy to get stuck in that political bubble where all you're ever thinking about is politics. Mm-hmm. And that's good and that's important, but we have a lot of people on our team who are going home to families, they're going home to kids, they're going to their real jobs, and they're exposed to the real world. And I think it's really important that campaigns have that, and also that governments have that parties have that, where you're not only dominated by people for whom their only source of meaning is politics.
Yeah. Let's talk. I want to dig into that just a little bit more because, I'm a BC Liberal member, president of a riding association, and, someone who's been involved both closely and then peripherally with BC Liberal campaigns for a long time. It has been a long time since I felt like we had fun on a campaign, that we felt like we had energy, that, some of them have felt like the proverbial death marches. And that is not great for morale. It's not great for boosting voter support. If you're not looking like you're enjoying being part of a campaign, I can't imagine why anyone would trust you with their vote.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely bang on. People need to have fun. They need to enjoy each other. I think, we need to break down some of the solitudes in our party, because sometimes what happens is, and you really see this when you run to lead a party, you see all these different solitudes that exist, and you see that sometimes they never really get connected. So a lot of the time you see that happen, whether it's with kind of the red and the blue sides of the party, or even when it comes to cultural communities, you see this sort of bubble where it's, okay, here's the mainstream BC Liberal Party, and over here, there's South Asian organizing, there's the Chinese community. I don't think we've done enough to really bring everyone together in our party. So you see these moments where for example, how influential the South Asian community is in our party, in politics as a whole. You go to big giant events and you don't see people from that community. So I think we've got to do a lot more to kind of bring people together and give them the opportunity to know each other, to like each other, to learn about each other. One of the things I've talked about a few times is when we do conventions, when I'm leader of the BC Liberal Party, they're going to be like international food fairs. So if you're, coming from Prince George and you haven't had a tremendous amount of exposure to Chinese food, you're going to discover xiaolongbao, which are soup dumplings. They're amazing. They're delicious, right? We kind of got to dig a little bit deeper and provide the opportunity for our members to know the extent of our party and of all the different cultures that it brings together. I think that's something we could do a lot more of.
Yeah, today is federal election day. There's millions of Canadians at the polls voting today. And really what you're talking about is a microcosm of what's happening nationally, where it seems like there are very distinct campaigns in different places.
Yeah.
And I don't really understand what's happening in Quebec. I don't really understand why Shachi Kurl is like the greatest villain that was ever created like in Quebec now. So, and I think what we've seen, and polls seem to indicate, is Canada's never felt more divided,
Yep.
more polarized, more, dare I say, American in its political outlook. You're right. Like, we got to find ways to bring people together.
Yeah, and you know what? That has to start with culture, right? You can't fake it.
Yeah.
Right. We can't just do this stuff anymore where there's an election coming. So we hire somebody to go talk to Chinese people, and we hire someone to go talk to Filipino people, and we hire somebody to go talk to South Asian people. Like we have to actually get to know each other and break bread together and know each other's cultures. And I honestly feel like we've almost kind of been going the wrong way in that regard versus the right way. So I think that, especially when you think about the newer, younger generation in those multicultural suburbs, you know, the suburban strivers, the young families that I believe are the future of politics in BC in terms of our ability or the NDP's ability to win. You know, there's a totally different expectation of what multiculturalism looks like. Yeah. It's not this grand, aspirational John Ralston Saul, let's write a book about it stuff. It's just the reality on the ground is that everybody has friends across different communities. We have the highest rate in Canada of marrying across different communities. You have this huge amount of just cultural interplay, which is just an everyday reality on the ground. And we need, as a party, we need to act like that in practice. Yeah,
and I think you were kind of bridging there from, it's not just ethnic communities that we're talking about.
Yeah.
It is generational communities. It's, frankly, social media. Like today, everyone over the age of 45 is laughing and ridiculing Jagmeet Singh for his TikTok video of him in the shower and like the sad music.
It's crushing with young voters.
It is. And my daughter is 18. It's her first election. I am 99.9% sure she's going out today to vote for Jagmeet Singh. And it's because he has reached out to her generation in a way that Aaron O'Toole, Justin Trudeau, just won't.
And he's able to do it with authenticity.
Yes.
Because he understands the zeitgeist. Yeah. Right? Like he's sufficiently fluent in what the culture is today that he can actually do it and it's not cringe.
Yes.
Yeah. Like when John Horgan said that Prop Rep was woke and lit.
Woke and lit, yeah.
Both woke and lit at the same time.
Vote for me, you Thurinos.
Exactly. It's that Steve Buscemi meme.
Yeah. So classic. So classic. You know, we did mention the federal election. My sense is that the BC Liberal leadership race up until now has kind of been in that a little bit of a preamble stage, but hopefully now that we're moving past the federal election, God willing, the votes get counted this week and we can move past it fairly quickly, that maybe we're going to kick into high gear.
I think you're right about that, Jordan. So what we saw, I mean, obviously I'm talking to a lot of people all the time. We saw kind of that next tranche of members starting to switch on to the BC Liberal leadership, I would say about 2 or 3 weeks before the federal writ dropped. Yeah. Then the writ dropped, that sideswiped everyone into focusing on federal. I think you're right. It'll take a few days, especially with all the mail-in ballots. By the end of this week, say Friday, we'll know exactly where we stand federally. And then, folks, there's the first BC Liberal leadership debate next week on the 28th. And I think for a lot of people, that'll really be, you know, the firing of the starting gun, where they start paying attention. A lot of people have already been kicking tires and talking and thinking about the leadership. This will be the first time where they really get to see all of the candidates, you know, side by side, squaring off, talking about their ideas, presenting themselves. So I think for a lot of people, it will really be the beginning.
Yeah, no, I agree. And for Kent's, like, now you're a little different. You've done a lot of work within the party for many years, so you're a bit more of a known quantity, even as, you know, what the media would term an outsider. But for Val Litwin, for example, it's his first chance. It's, you know, maybe people's first chance to see Renee off of Twitter. You know, things like that. So, but I gotta ask you, like, I know you're a political animal, and I know you're probably doing as much or more prep work for this debate than any other candidate, because that's just the nature of who you are. How are you preparing for this debate? And like, I don't envy you guys standing up there in front of everyone.
Yeah, you know, I'm a little nervous, to be honest, but it's a couple of things. The first is I've been talking to members for 6 months.
Yes.
So, the reality is you're talking with people, you're seeing what resonates. Sometimes you say things and everyone just goes, "What are you talking about?" And you realize, I thought that was a great line, but it was terrible. So you stop saying it, right?
Like Adrian Dix in COVID press conferences when he always tries to draw a line, it never works.
Yeah, exactly, right? So, by the way, do you remember in 2013, change for the better, one practical step at a time?
Oh my God.
It was the worst slogan ever. Anyway, Adrian Dix.
Yeah.
Thank you, Adrian, for losing to us in 2013.
Practical step at a time.
Yeah. But you know what? It's talking to a lot of people and just seeing what vibes, because this is going to be a digital debate. There's no audience. Right? So you don't know what people are going to respond to. So a lot of it comes down to what have people been responding to in conversations prior to the debate. I've been watching some of the previous debates, and as you and I were talking about briefly before we started doing this, you go back to 2011, and my God, it sounded like people were doing like a university exam, because they all seemed to be so determined to drop a factoid or a number like every 30 seconds. They've all got briefing binders
because I know what percentage of people are X,
It was a good and an interesting debate to watch, but the contrast is very real. In 2011, this was a leadership race where you win, you're the premier. In this race, you win, congratulations, you've just won 10 years of hard work to rebuild our party and to build an entirely new slate of candidates. You're going to need to find dozens of new people. You're going to need to work your way into government. There's years ahead in terms of rebuilding. I mean, if you're measuring the drapes from the premier's office, you got to give your head a shake.
So you think we'll get, and this is my hope, that we'll get less of those finite policy discussions? Like, you're going in to be leader of the opposition. I don't really care what your policy is on coastal forestry. No offense. Like, as long as you generally hew to the principles of free enterprise and all that, getting out of private enterprise's way, great. But my sense is this is going to be more about rebuilding the party.
I think it's about rebuilding the party, and I would actually go this far. So we've put out a lot of ideas. Talking point, true fact. We've put out more ideas than every other candidate combined.
It's like sitting with Hillary Clinton over here.
But the thing is, he just ticked off. He wanted to make a Hillary Clinton comparison.
Maybe she'll endorse you. No, I'm just kidding.
If Obama can endorse.
She likes meddling in campaigns.
Oh gosh. So the thing is this though. I don't think that this is a platform-driven leadership, right? If you're putting out a platform, well, you're putting out a platform like 2.5 years before an election. You're kind of giving away the farm. I think, to me, what people are really doing when they put out ideas is they're trying to demonstrate a way of thinking. They're trying to demonstrate fluency. I'll be honest, what we've tried to do is we've tried to put out very new ideas, but we're trying to be continuous with the values of our party while getting into areas that we traditionally have not touched or have not taken ownership of. So, childcare is a very good example. I've been talking about the regulated cannabis sector. We're talking about the tech sector, and we're trying to do it in a way where we demonstrate how we can be continuous with our values, but also introduce ourselves to new audiences and new groups of potential supporters that might not previously have seen themselves in our party.
Look, we're doing the same thing at ICBA, where you have to be geared to the times, but anchored to the rock of your values.
That's well put.
And it's an old Youth for Christ saying, so be careful. Geared to the times, but anchored to the rock. And essentially, we change the way that we've communicated with people. We use more social media. Can't rely on Tony Parsons in the NewsHour to hit every British Columbian anymore. You try not to be as 1970s-ish in our approaches. And that's what the party has to do too. I sit around and I'm like, okay, there are voters in this election who were born 2 or 3 years now after 9/11.
You make a really interesting point there around that 1970s lexicon. And I think you raise a really great point, Jordan. We have to be continuous with the values of our party, anchored to the rock.
Anchored to the rock.
Anchored to the rock.
But geared to the times.
But geared to the times. And part of that is changing the way we articulate those long-held values. I've gotten into, frankly, arguments with people about this. I don't think that most people know what free enterprise means anymore.
No.
And I think if you want people to buy into the ideas of free enterprise, you have to find new ways to articulate it, right? It's sort of, there's an American political comparison where people born after, people that are under 40 have no living recollection of the Cold War cultural frame.
Right.
So for them, socialism doesn't mean what it means for people of a certain age.
Yeah.
In the same way that, like, honestly, we can't just harp on about the 90s anymore, because half the electorate does not remember the 90s.
Yeah.
They don't know what that means. They are not, in their view,
Fast ferry
engaged.
sounds great.
Yeah, they're not engaged in a battle for the soul of British Columbia
Totally.
between free enterprise and socialism. That is just not a communications frame that has any resonance with the incremental new voter that we need to get. So we've got to reinvent the way we talk about our long-held values and try to, position ourselves as geared to the times.
Yes. No, absolutely. I mean, now, having said all that about platform, I'm going to ask you about one specific project,
Yes, sir.
because I think it is an important microcosm of what the NDP leadership record is like. That's the Massey Tunnel. So you have a government who cancels a bridge that's coming in $900 million under the projected budget, simply because it was Christy Clark who announced it. Really, there's no other reason why they got rid of it.
No, that's not true. There is another reason why they got rid of it. They got rid of it because it did not win them ridings down Highway 1.
Yeah.
Because the NDP strategy is largely reliant on trying to extend their winnability down the Highway 1 corridor.
Right.
So for their purposes, for them to take that capital investment off the books and focus on other investments that go into NDP winnable ridings is exactly why they're doing this.
Fair enough. And the blue wall did fall. So.
Yeah, the blue wall fell, right? So, I mean, they're taking a very aggressive kind of Highway 1 strategy.
Yeah.
I would add, even the announcement they made the other week, it served two purposes. Number one, they were dangling bait for federal funding.
Yeah.
And number two, they were punting the project until after the next election.
For sure.
So they're not going to spend any real money on that project until after the next election.
For sure.
And obviously, hopefully, there'll be a change in government and we'll be able to get it moving at that time.
Yeah. But even what they decided to build is exactly the same size as they have now during peak hours. No forward thinking about Skytrain.
Yeah, and the issue that I pointed out is just making sure that it is rail ready, right?
Yeah.
I mean, my belief is that whatever the format of the project, it needs to be rail ready. It's a disservice to the region if you don't think about how do we make sure that there's capacity, that the load bearing is appropriately geared, all of those things to make sure that you can put rail through there in due course. Because once you build whatever that crossing ends up being, you're basically baking things in for, let's call it 60 years.
Yeah.
So if you're baking in that there will be no rail for 60 years,
I know.
that's a pretty significant planning effect.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We did mention the blue wall, so we should just reference that again shortly. It used to be that you hit Surrey Cloverdale, you were guaranteed BC Liberal or SoCred before that, seats all the way out and up into the interior. That fell. Surrey Cloverdale is held by an NDP. Yeah, both Langleys, which is my ridings. Starchuk. How could I forget the illustrious, immortal Mike Starchuk? We lost a couple of the Abbotsfords, Mission, like that wall that used to be there, that sort of, baseline number of seats, same on the North Shore, is gone. How do we rebuild that given shifting demographics, changing way people, the changing type of people who are moving to those communities? Chilliwack's very different now. Abbotsford is very different. Langley has changed. How do we rebuild that, especially when you got electoral reform coming? It's going to be even more important.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's take it all the way back and let's zoom out to just the entire changing electoral map, Jordan, right?
Yeah.
Because that's even more important once we set this frame. So electoral boundaries review,
Yes.
right? This happens after every second election. Right, there is a review of the electoral boundaries. They're adjusted in order to accommodate for the changing population in different areas. By and large, the goal is to have ridings be of a relatively similar size. But since 1979, there has been protection for 17 ridings in the north and the central Okanagan. And those 17 ridings have basically remained intact ever since 1979. And there's a solid argument to be made around the charter right to effective representation, right? So if you've got a riding that takes 3 days to drive across versus, you can drive it across it in 10 minutes, that's a pretty big deal when it comes to representation.
Yeah.
So what the NDP has done is they have basically changed the direction provided to the Electoral Boundaries Commission for the first time since 1979 and said those 17 ridings are open game.
Yeah.
So what we will likely see come back from the Electoral Boundaries Commission around a year from now will be a reduction in those rural ridings. That could probably end up in the Supreme Court, again, over effective representation. But depending on how that shakes out, you could see, let's say, 6 less ridings out of that 17 ridings.
Look, the top third of the province.
It's 2/3.
Yeah.
Those 17 ridings are
right.
2/3 of the
Yeah.
entire landmass of the province.
I'm saying that just the top third might end up being its own.
Yeah,
one
you could see something along those lines happen. And here's something to understand. Out of those 17 ridings, how many did the BC Liberals hold today?
I think all 17 or 16?
13.
Oh, 13. Wow.
13.
It was
right?
a bad election. We only have 13.
So 13
Yeah.
out of 28 seats.
Yeah.
13 out of the 28 BC
Yep.
Liberal seats are in those protected ridings. That is a reality.
Yep.
So if you see those 17 ridings go down by half a dozen, now you've got, in addition, the Electoral Boundaries Commission has direction to add up to 6 new ridings
Yep.
to take us to 93. You could see a dozen new ridings being apportioned around the province. One probably goes to downtown Kelowna.
Yep.
One probably goes to the Langford area, which is very fast growing.
Yep.
And then you're talking about up to 10 new ridings
Yep.
that are going to go primarily into the fast growing areas of the Lower Mainland and the Fraser Valley,
Yes.
which means, the River District is going to be significant in Vancouver, the Falls Creek Flats. You're going to see, downtown Langley is very quickly densifying. Especially with Skytrain going in.
A little off still, but yes.
Well, you're going to see by the time of the next election, but there'll be a bit of a lagging indicator factor there
sure.
as well, because it's going to be based on the previous census data.
Yeah.
But you're going to see all this change happening where suddenly there's, let's call it, 10 new ridings in the Lower Mainland, and in the Lower Mainland, that BC Liberal tide has been receding and receding and receding. To use Vancouver as an example, we went from 45% of the vote to 30 in the course of 3 elections, and that was sort of, again, the leading indicator. Now we're nowhere in Burnaby. We're blown out in the Tri-Cities. We're way down in Surrey, Langley, Chilliwack. So when you add all of those ridings in, and you add the demographic factors that you've alluded to, and quite honestly, the housing frustration, which is a very significant factor, that young, multicultural, striving, urban and suburban family is 100% the future of electoral politics in British Columbia. So if, as a BC Liberal Party, we cannot figure out how to reacquaint ourselves with that new cohort of voters, we've got a real problem. Absolutely. If you're not, I always say to folks, if you're not getting a 20-year-old barista in Vancouver yet, okay, that's an issue. If you're not getting a 37-year-old partner track lawyer in Abbotsford to vote BC Liberal, you're
non-existent.
Yeah, you're non-existent.
Yeah.
So there's a fundamental renewal that has to happen in order to win back the trust and support of those voters.
Yeah. One of the great legends of the BC Liberal Party is, Mike MacDonald and Christy Clark driving around the province recruiting candidates. Gord Campbell talked about it a lot. Not to always go back to the past, but he talked a lot about, asking who could win this riding that the NDP held. Oh, Bill Barasoff could. Everyone told me Bill Barasoff, so I went out and got Bill Barasoff, and guess what? Now it's one of the safest BC Liberal ridings. Speaking as someone who, is prominent in the party, in a riding, in an area where there was an open seat, I can tell you that no one from headquarters ever called. No one, and I wouldn't have run anyways, but, still pick up the phone and call, right? Like, you got to call and at least ask and see who could go. Very clearly, the last regime did not do much, if any, work on candidate recruitment. It was all outsourced to individual MLAs, and that didn't work. So maybe that's my last question: is how do you attract the right people to come and run with this party in order to really effectively rebrand it? Because ultimately, those are the culture carriers, those are the ambassadors in their local communities. Yeah,
that's a really, really important question, Jordan. So I think it is a fair statement that we didn't do that work of recruitment in between 2017 and 2020. I think as a party, we were existentially struggling to absorb the reality of our loss.
Yeah.
Right? You still heard people saying, but we got the most votes. We weren't in government.
Yeah.
We weren't in government.
Yeah.
If you're not in government, you've lost, guys. Right? Yeah. We needed to come to terms with that. We failed to do so, and the electorate let us know by smacking us across the face with a salmon. Yeah. Hey, listen, go away and renew yourselves. Yeah. So we need to get that message loud and clear. We need to go and do that renewal, and we need to be really, really concerted about it. Mm-hmm. I think the reality is we're going to be on a 93-seat map. We've got 28 incumbents today. There are some that will not run again in the next election. We're going to need to find a ton of new, strong candidates of all ages, backgrounds, geography. There's going to be a ton of work to happen there. There's a few things that we need to do. The first is the reality of the feedback loop. right? So if you look at the NDP, I don't support their quota-driven approach to candidacies, but what I do think is very intelligent about what they do is they intentionally build a pipeline of candidates.
Yes.
So once you have, some MLAs who represent a community or a generation, it's a lot easier to attract the next. The truth is, we have one MLA under 45. Our friend Trevor Halford,
Yes.
great guy.
Barely under 45.
One.
Yeah.
The NDP has 13.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that kind of, firstly, it affects your ability to attract the next candidate. Secondly, it affects your ability to convince people to see themselves in your party. So that's a huge part of it. Is people have to see themselves in our party, see themselves taken seriously in our party in order to go from, I'm not so sure about this party, to I see myself in this party, to I'm going to run for this party. Yeah. And I think a huge part of what we have to do, and it's some of the work that I did with the Forum for Millennial Leadership, which I set up, is to identify people and to help prepare them before they're candidates.
Yes.
Because when you think about the incremental, newer, younger candidate, someone who's got a job, a career, they're on their track to somewhere else, it's really hard for them to step away, frankly, especially if they are women. It's really hard to step away and go, okay, I'm running. So we need to make sure that we're doing two things. The first is kind of de-risking candidacy, making it so we're not just expecting people to go run into the machine guns, and making sure that they have the ability to explore the idea of candidacy before they run, so that for a year before they're anywhere near announcing their candidacy, they're going through some media training, they're talking to MLAs, they're figuring out, does this work for me in my family circumstances? They're becoming very strong candidates, so that then the day they announce their candidacy is not the first time anyone's heard of them. It's not the first time they're going through a difficult media interview. So I think it's really important that we build people up in that way, and I think it's really important that we just turn the page as a party and that we demonstrate we're looking to the future, not the past. And that's where I think leadership is really important, right? We've got to make sure that we have not just a leader, but leaders in our party who are of a new generation, who are of a new cohort of people, and who are reaching out and looking forward, not looking backward.
Perfect. All right. You may be watching this and saying, why doesn't Jordan ask him this? Well, good news for you. You don't need me to ask Gavin. Gavin is available. He's got set up this, which I think is a very innovative campaign technique, by the way. You set up a calendar. You can actually book yourself in for a Zoom with Gavin personally, right into his calendar.
Yeah, you can literally go to www.gavindew.ca, and there's a little button in the top right-hand corner of the website that says book a call. And anybody can book a call with me, and I'd love to talk to you.
Have those been fun?
Yeah, they've been great.
Yeah,
it's Jordan, it's interesting. Like every time we send out an email, pretty much, we include, hey, just book a call with me.
Yeah.
It's on the website, it's everywhere. And it's great because you get people that are going, so this is just a call with us? Like, this is, honestly, in some cases, they're confused. And I think it speaks to just this issue of accessibility, right? When you build a concrete bunker around a party or around the leadership of a party, then people feel as if they're on the margins and their opinion doesn't count and they're not writing a big enough check or they're not important enough to matter. So it's been great. You would not believe some of the really fascinating conversations you end up having with everyday people who are really passionate about an issue or they just want to kick tires. I think it's one of the great merits of the long process we've had in this leadership campaign, where people are not just doing 30 seconds of diligence. Like, they're having long conversations with or long conversations about every single candidate and figuring out what are the relative merits of this candidate versus that candidate. Who's my first vote? Who's my second vote? What does the future look like? It's been really great.
Yeah, no, it's a smart play, and frankly, every MLA should have one of these links set up already.
Well, Jordan, under my leadership, every MLA will.
There you go.
So I actually think it's great. I mean, it's a really, I've been talking to some MLAs about it. It's a really great way just to provide easy access where it's not this ornate process of, going through to get a meeting. It literally is just, hey, you want to jump on a call?
Yeah.
Let's jump on a call. Yeah. It's really easy to do. So www.gavindew.ca, top right corner. Love to talk to you.
Click it. Up will pop a number of appointments that are available. Gavin's available to talk. Do it. It is worthwhile. Gavin's a smart guy. Even if you maybe you're not thinking of him as your first choice, but second, third, fourth, whatever. Smart guy. Always enjoy our conversations, Gavin.
Thanks, buddy.
And wish you all the best. And I can tell you that McLean Kay from the York and I think we're planning to do a post-game show for the debate because, we're the family podcast. So the BC Poly Hot Stove on the York and
I want to throw you an opportunity you should do.
Okay.
Somebody's got to do bingo. Buzzword bingo?
Okay.
I think buzzword bingo has got to happen.
Buzzword bingo. Okay.
Yeah.
Buzzword bingo.
With a drinking theme.
Yeah, the drink. I have to podcast after this. I can't be drinking all night on the show. Okay.
You're telling me I got a debate, man.
We'll see if I can think of HST. No, just kidding. All right. Anyways, thanks again for this, and I'm sure we'll be in touch because we have another 6 months of this campaign to go. So voting is in February.
February 3rd to 5th.
That's Super Bowl weekend.
That's right.
That's when the Green Bay Packers will have shocked the world by coming back and going to the Super Bowl. So
there we go.
Looking forward to seeing this on Freezing Cold Takes later. Okay, thanks for watching, and we'll be back next time with another ICBA conversation.